to the second hello everyone, welcome to the second webinar held by the team and Sunua Consulting Limited in this year. And today we have our esteemed speakers, Rajiv and Nixie, to introduce the inspection arts of the venues. So let's start with the speech by our Management Director, Elaine.
Into cooperative opportunities. Hi, dear friends. Thank you for joining today's webinar. This training is designed to explore how we can share site inspections from one-way demonstrations into cooperative opportunities, supporting more international MICE events for Macau. Over the years, the remarkable growth of Macau's MICE industries has been built on professionals in every role, including venues management, service delivery, and global marketing. Today's training aims to strengthen these foundations by sharing critical strategies. We are honored to have Patrick and Porrick as our moderators, guiding us to these trainings. Additionally, we are honored to have two global MICE experts, Lindsay McKenzie and Rajin Cody, whose experts and insights will provide invaluable strategy to highlight your venue's strengths and effectively meet clients' needs. Finally, I would like to thank all of you for the dedicated efforts contributed in Macau MICE industries so that we can continue to achieve the growth. Your hard work is the cornerstone of our success. I trust that today's trainings will spark innovative ideas and inspire lasting partnerships that push our industry forward. Let's turn every site inspections into a powerful opportunities. Without further ado, let me pass the floor to Mr. Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Apam, as always, for giving us the opportunity to present an ongoing insight into the best education for the MICE industry. And we have a really very presentation in terms of our webinar this morning, which is entitled The Art of Winning Site Inspections. So it's how do we transform site inspections from being merely presentations to ensuring that hard business, association business, corporate business comes out of this. And we're going to do it by unpacking the various elements of that site inspection in terms of the pre-planning right through the client communication, what happens on site, and then how best to follow up. So it's a very broad agenda and a very comprehensive one. And we're very fortunate, as you said, Elaine, this morning, to have two brilliant, in fact, three, Porrick, I'm going to include you in that brilliance, of course, well-known global MICE experts joining us from around the world, and joining us from a market that is really important to Macau and you know very well is Mr. Rajiv Kohli. Rajiv, you're very welcome. And Lindsay McLachlan coming from the UK, and Porrick Gilligan, as you know, is knows Macau so well and has been with Sulnua. So Rajiv, before we get into the practicalities of our webinar, can I just ask you to introduce yourself and your company?
Thank you, Patrick. My name is Rajiv Kohli. I've been in the business for about 30 years now. My family runs India's most awarded DMC, especially when it comes to incentives. And I've also had the privilege of being a two-time president of SITE, the Society for Incentive Travel Excellence, following both my seniors here, Patrick and Porrick, in their footsteps. And excited to share our knowledge with everybody else.
Thank you, Rajiv. And just, have you ever been to Macau?
I have. It's been a fairly long time. I went there a few times as a kid, and I went there as an adult when the Venetian and I think the Hard Rock were brand new, and haven't been back since then. And it's on my list. I'm really curious to see.
Fantastic. Thank you. Lindsay, you're going all the way now to the UK and in fact landing in Scotland. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the company, Abby?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Lindsay. I'm from Abbey Conferences. We are a PCO, which is a professional conference organizer, and we primarily work with associations. So there's an association for everything, and every one of them has a meeting of some sort. We work with a lot of global global conferences all over the world. I'm also a member of ICA, the International Conference and Congress Association, and I'm a member of the board for the UK and Ireland. So be quite involved in the industry in that way as well.
Fantastic. And Lindsay, when I say the word Macau, have you ever been there, or what comes into your mind?
I have not been, but I would just say it as I've not been yet, because it sounds like it's a really high quality destination, a lot of very sophisticated venues. So it sounds very exciting and has lots of potential.
Excellent. So Porrick, you co-founder of Suonua, the lead consultant. You've been to Macau many, many times. So I'm not going to ask you about Suonua, but in terms of your own impressions of the arc of time over the last 3 years, what are the big changes you've seen in Macau very quickly? Because I know there have been many.
The changes have been coming very fast and very dynamically. Probably the biggest and most significant change is the connectivity now that there is between Macau and Hong Kong, by means of a 55-kilometer long bridge, which links Macau now to a major international hub, and obviously opens up Macau then to the potential to receive international visitors. Macau does have its own airport, which is also open to international visitors. So there's two opportunities to get into Macau very easily, either directly into Macau or through Hong Kong, and then using the that 55-kilometer long bridge. That is a feat of human engineering that really, I think, is quite awesome and quite amazing. And I think testament as well to the can-do attitude that's at the very heart of how Macau presents itself.
So true, Porrick. Connectivity is so important, and of course now we've Hanjing and we've the Greater Bay Area. So I think as you've rightly said, when you look at the opportunities for the potential event planner to bring business to the region, it's extended. Okay, guys, good to have a profile and a context. So, I mean, our session is going to be very, very dynamic, it's going to be very question orientated. And let me just remind all our viewers that if they have a question at any stage, please put it in the chat. We'll try and answer it immediately. If not immediately, we'll follow up and make sure you get an answer. But, I started the webinar by saying, the structure we wanted to take was to start off by saying, is site inspections, are they still relevant? Is it something of the past? How does it fit into the sales cycle? What's the strategic importance? I have to give you, as the moderator did last time, I think that site inspections are sales calls on steroids. I think the most effective way of getting business. But is that statement still valid? Rajiv, can I start with you from your view of that statement?
Absolutely. I mean, the site inspection is where you make your extra money. I mean, apart from showing the client or the planner, whoever it may be, what you are, if you don't successfully upsell on the site inspection, then you're not doing it well. I mean, I have a case study where I took a 2,200 euro trip and upsold it for 4,500 euros on a site inspection. And for me, that was a humongous record because everybody has $100 here or there to move, but never doubled it. So yes, for me, site inspections are critical because that's the only place you actually put the face with the name. Only so much you can do online.
Okay. Lindsay, do you agree with that? And particularly from the view of the association market, where does the site inspection fit in?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Online we can have emails, we can have calls and webinars like this, but it really moves the relationship forward and makes everything very real. And from a very practical point of view, it's showing the actual reality of a destination, the reality of the venue, especially in a world of AI. We're becoming less and less trusting of what we see online. You can airbrush all those photos, but actually I'm I personally, for most places, am not going to book a ballroom. I'm not going to book a hotel unless I've seen it with my own eyes. And there's another element to this of the relationship building of we are in a people industry. So I want to meet the people that I'll be dealing with before we agree to most big conferences.
Interesting. Trust is still the basis of our industry, yeah, and the need to have that reinforced. Particularly, I think, in terms of a destination like Macau, which may not be as well known as one would like it to be. Porrick, from a destination point of view, from the big picture point of view, how important? I know site inspections are different from fam trips, so they're about a specific piece of business, but it's also a chance to sell the destination, to position the destination. Is that true?
Yeah, I think if we think about sort of, you know, any sort of sales transaction, just think about retail. So we can buy a new sweater online. We can look at the picture and we can say, yeah, I would like to have that sweater, and we can buy it and it will be sent to us. But it's useless until we take it out of the box and put it on and see whether it fits us or not. And in a way, that's exactly what a site inspection is. A site inspection is the opportunity to try on that sweater and see if it fits you, because it might look great from a distance, but if it doesn't fit you, well, then it's not going to work. So I think the site inspection is that opportunity to try out for fit, to see if the needs of my association or my corporation are met in the way the destination is set up. And you can only really do that on a site inspection. And, you know, the more complex the program you're doing is, the more absolutely essential the site inspection will be. And I think, you know, we all know on this call that we're talking about a site inspection. Often there are multiple site inspections. Often, you know, you could have 2 or 3 site inspections. An association conference could require a site inspection in relation to all the technical sides of the conference, but then would require maybe a separate site inspection in relation to the social side. So again, the more complex the piece of business you're handling, whether it's a corporation or an association, the more the site inspection is important, and then also the more likelihood of there being more than one site inspection.
Okay, so one would also add in probably the knowledge of the planner of the destination, and in fact those trusting relationships, if it's a second piece of business or a third piece of business. Rajiv, do you ever have an online site inspection? Is that something that ever happens?
Actually, never done that because I'm a DMC and I'm selling the destination and the dream, and I'm a complicated destination. I'm not a single city destination. For any incentive, a 3-city destination. The most I can do is a great PowerPoint presentation and spin the yarn, but never done an online. Did come up in the pandemic, but no. For
Okay.
me, I mean, I agree what Lindsay said. It's that shaking the hand and hugging each other which closes the sale, and that's what creates the trust.
And Lindsay, that in the association environment, very different from the corporate meeting and very different from the incentive. Is there ever a use for an online site inspection? Does that?
Yeah, there is. But I would say it's generally that I, as the professional conference organizer, would do sort of the pre-site visit, sort of
Right.
narrowing down via the online aspects, and before presenting what I've shortlisted to the client. Our associations are much more price sensitive and cost sensitive, but also really time poor people. They're generally a lot of academics and they're working full-time jobs, so they can't afford to take time out or use their association budget to visit various destinations unless they've really sort of shortlisted it down and have a real possibility of using that destination or that venue. They aren't going to be frivolous and go and see lots of places generally.
Good. So when you get a site inspection, it's a piece of business to lose. So it's
Absolutely.
really important to do it well. Okay. So can we talk about the pre-planning and that communication with the client? Because you, Lindsay, I'm going to ask you to continue on this idea of the trust and how do you, how do you communicate with the client? How do you give them that sense of reassurance that this site inspection is going to be, is going to meet their needs and it's going to be appropriate to their time and the budget, and how does that communication flow go?
Well, I will generally give a very good brief to the venues that we're considering. And what I want to see in return is that people have actually read it and understood it and done their own work. So I will always include a link to the client if I'm allowed to. And I want to see that they have actually understood that it is an association, it's not a corporate, or they've not tried to sort of just send me a boilerplate, a standard response that they sent to everyone. What I would like to see in a lot of responses is real examples. So if I've sent you a brief for a 250-person conference for an association, and all of your photos are of glamorous product launches for thousands of people, it shows me that you haven't. It shows me you either haven't read the brief or that you don't have relevant examples. So therefore, I might be your first association conference. So if you have relevant examples to relate to, better still if you have a client feedback, that's always really good to include.
Okay. Rajiv, who should go on a site inspection and when should that site inspection take place?
Well, in my context, all my site inspections are done after the event is awarded. Now, it's interesting because there's a huge difference between a site inspection for a conference, a meeting versus an incentive or a corporate. And I think that's where many a times people miss the brief and the understanding and treat both as equal. Someone like Lindsay is also focused on the actual physical room, the size, the audiovisual, whereas our corporate or incentive is looking at something very different. And on a DMC perspective and doing the incentive side, generally our site inspections happen after the destination is chosen. And only once in my life have I done a site inspection in which the DMC wasn't chosen. And I recognize this is quite different from what happens in Europe and other parts where the client will go with 2 DMCs and test it out. That's happened to me only once in my life. Okay, I didn't win that business, but I won a friend for life out of that site inspection. So it's interesting. What a big change. What happening is not the client doesn't always come on the site inspection. It's the agency, and that's a huge shift from whereas maybe I don't know, an association, if the association buyer would go along. I'm doing site inspections without the end client, and that's trending stronger these days.
And in terms of the Indian market, do buyers who are, as India as a generating destination of business, do they normally send the agent as well? The agent is always included in that.
I think it's very rare an Indian corporate goes on the site inspection alone.
Okay.
Indians, as everyone's listening to the call knows, because Hong Kong, Macau are very big destinations for India. It is a very dog-eat-dog market over here, and very rarely would an agency let the client go on their own. Okay. So it's a challenge.
The challenge. Porrick, a past English professor, a man whose command of the English is extraordinary, as I know from all of the red marks I get on anything I have to write. We all speaking English here on this webinar, and we speak English in Macau, but a common language, is different from a common communication and understanding. What's your advice, Porrick, on communicating in terms of just the written communication and even the spoken communication, terminology, and that whole area?
Well, I think it's probably significantly easier now than it would have been, 10 or 20 years ago, on the basis that I can write an email in any language I want and send it to a client in any language she wants. So in a way, we've kind of moved very far, but that's just the transactional language. There's also the non-transactional language, which is the body language, and it's the body language that you really need to learn to read during a site inspection, because that gives you a very, very clear picture and understanding of, you know, what the client is feeling at any given time. So are you on the right track? Are you not on the right track? Again, the body language will tell you. I think we're very familiar, Pat, with you know, cultural kind of differences around, you know, certain cultures will always say yes, but they actually don't really mean yes at all. And it's a big surprise at the end then when you hear that's actually a very definite no. So I think there's so many different languages that you have to learn. But most of them are in the realm of psychology, and most of them are in the realm of human interaction, as opposed to the transactional kind of thing about communication, which, as we know, is very easy to do, or it's very easy to achieve with the sophisticated tools of communication that we have these days. But in relation, Pat, I thought I'd remind you of some experiences that we had collectively over the decades where, you know, in terms of who goes on a site inspection, we have had situations where the client and his wife were both on the site inspection. And we've had situations, you'll remember very well, where in fact the wife was making the decisions.
Well, Park, the wife always makes the decisions. That's universal. That's a truism for any part of the world. But yeah, you're dead right.
But the point of that was just to say that the real language of the site inspection is the kind of the secret language of being able to read uh, the room in general, and that involves the psychology of how we communicate in non-verbal ways.
Okay.
So in a way, it's one more example of how the work that we do in the you know, the business events industry is a very complex piece of work that involves everything from being able to handle a pretty complex spreadsheet of numbers and manage a budget, right over to managing the dynamic of a complex series of relationships that will be presented to you during a site inspection. Often where, you know, again, I'll remind you of situations where we've had very enthusiastic sales managers in hotels who are very anxious to show how good they are in front of their general manager, and lose the run of themselves completely in terms of realizing that the reason that they're here at all is to mediate the whole kind of business of why that particular property is a useful one or not. So I think the whole communication thing is multi-layered. It's like an onion. There's so many layers to it, and a very successful site inspection will be one where you negotiate successfully all of the layers of those onions, and you really kind of make that connection, which we started off, I think, at the very beginning with, that connection with the client that leads to trust and confidence.
So true, and I know Rajiv and Lindsay have great examples of that they want to tell us about who what you should share in front of the client. But before I go into that, I just want to finish off the pre-planning piece, if I might, and then Rajiv, I'll come back to you. Site inspections, are there costs involved? And if so, when do you identify those costs? Is it in the pre-communication? Lindsay.
Yes, we have costs involved. It's generally built into the budget of the conference, which again is why we try and limit how many different destinations or how many days we're going to go to a destination in order, so they are really packed itineraries, and we may be seeing, you know, yesterday I went to 8 venues in one day because we had already sort of selected the city and we just needed to pin down some details. So that's one of the things. Of yes, there are costs, but so it's nice if someone is able to give us a discount on the hotel rooms or to host us. And similarly, if it can be arranging taxis, it can be dinners and things, all of those little things show how much you value the business, how much you want to look after the attendees. Sort of adding on to what Parag has just said there is, half the people will remember what you actually said about the rooms, but everybody will remember how you made them feel when they were in your venue, in your destination. And I think that's one of the other powerful, valuable elements of having a site inspection in person, is you get that opportunity. You know, you're not the person who showed them to the door, you're the person who booked them a taxi to their next destination. It gives you those opportunities to stand out.
Okay, Rajiv, just on the cost issue and, you know, letting people know what are their expectations in advance, what are the client's expectations, what is the agent's expectations on costs, and what's comp and what's not.
So I think you have to be upfront. I mean, there should be no surprises, but and as I am culturally closer to the Asian community, I've been paying close attention to what happens in the West. And one of the things I've discovered in places like Europe and the US, nothing is for free. So when the same client is going to London, the same client is going to Paris, the same client is going to New York and paying, why shouldn't he or she pay me? And I said, look, I can, in the olden days, 5 years ago, everything was free. And we as a DMC were fearful everything has to be free. Today, we can charge, yes, things which I can control, like transport is complimentary from my side. Hotels are negotiated to be credited back when the group operates. And I'm finding clients are reasonable. Any client who pushes that I want everything free, 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 I would take that as a slight red flag. And quite frankly, it doesn't happen very often. It is my job as a supplier to make it as cost effective as possible for people like Lindsay. That is my participation in the relationship. Okay, a site inspection should not be looked at as one-time transactional for one group. Okay, as I work with third parties, I work with planners. They may bring X corporate today, but they can come back with Y corporate tomorrow. So if I don't make it easy, if I don't push, and I will fight for my clients, and if I don't fight, then I'm not a great partner, am I? But just be upfront, be fair, and I would tell all the hotels here, when a DMC does come to you about a site inspection, be fair, be friendly, be supportive, because even for us as a DMC, if we're not paying for the hotel, I don't control the airlines, we still have out-of-pocket costs. Okay, we are still taking the people out for dinner. We're still giving gifts. It's not that everything we give, we get for free, and just be conscious of that.
So no surprises, and don't be, I suppose, use the partnership model, but make sure the value for everybody in that partnership is clear, and particularly in terms of the client. Fantastic. Okay, I'm pretty clear now. We're on our way to Macau, and we're on site. And you know, there are always certain things that can go right and go wrong. First question for you, Lindsay, and then I'll go around the table is a site inspection agenda set in stone, or is there flexibility? You know, how does it work?
So the agenda for the day will be set beforehand, and most planners will be upfront and tell you where their plans are. You know, I'm seeing you in the morning, but I'm going to your competitor in the afternoon. Most people can be upfront about that. But in terms of when people are in your venue, it's a partnership, and what do you want to see? But generally for me, I think the most useful thing is doing the attendee journey. Start me where people are going to collect the badge, start me where people are going to check into the hotel, and then actually show me where we're going from there. Don't start me in some back room, or show me the kitchen, or don't show me the thing that you're most proud of. Show me the thing that I'm going to experience first as an attendee. And I think part of this comes with really part of the pre-communication, which we talked about, but also your pre-planning is researching your client that's coming to see you, and really knowing the brief of the event. So you don't turn up, shake hands with everybody and say, so this is a meeting for how many? Who are you again? I want you to know exactly who's going to be there, and be prepared to know, yes, this is the room I have selected or proposed for your welcome reception, and use the terminology that they have used in their brief as well. Some people will call it a gala dinner, some people will call it a welcome reception, and it really shows that you know what you're talking about if you have adapted to their terms and to how they want to see the event, so they can really imagine themselves there in 6 months' time, in a year's time, doing this all over again with you.
So the individual, whoever they are, should be able to give sufficient recognition and status, but equally they should be competent to answer the questions in an intelligent and a way which reflects having read the file.
Yeah, and there's also, similar to what Rajiv said earlier, there are so many opportunities. We went into some venues yesterday and they loved certain spaces, but then turned their head and said, oh, what's through there? That restaurant's lovely. We'll do our committee dinner, or we'll bring our partners there. So there is always the opportunity for upselling if you're prepared to be flexible and take them into other spaces. It's also worth knowing what's already on in the venue that day, so you can be, it's really shows a lot about you if you are respectful to the clients that are in the building already and say, we can't go in there, but I've got photos to show you of that room. I've been on site visits before where a salesperson has just burst into the room at the back and said, and this is this and this, and there was a session going on. And it was like, well, if you're doing that for them, you'll do that to me. So yeah, it shows a lot of, you know, how flexible you can be and how respectful you are of the clients that are in the room.
Rajiv, you said yourself that you're very close culturally to obviously to the region, and knowing all the points that Lindsay has just made, but you know, selling and the selling style, hard sell, soft sell. How do you handle that? How do you do the training to make sure that you're selling appropriately?
So, I mean, one thing that Porrig said is reading the room, and that is not a strong trait in Asia. Okay, it's a very Western behavior, and it's one that I've learned over the years, and the one I use to my strong advantage because I know my competition doesn't do it as well as they could. Um, Nobody is going to buy, and then my skill set is more on the incentive side. Nobody in the world is going to buy your product just because you have a great hotel. I like my site inspections to be flexible. I will change things on the fly. I will drop things in unplanned just by based on my interaction with the planner, because an incentive planner and a corporate meeting planner and an association planner are very different people. Okay, they're got different things going in their heads. I just did a site inspection 2 weeks ago where it completely flipped the program. Instead of taking a 20-minute bus ride from getting to the hotel to the sites, we're going to take a boat and a tuk-tuk across to get that done. And that came from the client. He said, can we do it? I said, sure, it's logistics. Let's try it out. He loved it. And lo and behold, the group's going to do it. I think people doing leading site inspections from the supplier side should not get stressed to show everything. Okay? Should not get worried. I need to show them. And for those of you who go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see an article I wrote, let me show you the gym. And that's exactly what happened to me 2 weeks ago. It's not showing everything you think you need to show them. It's showing what the customer wants. And that's a very critical aspect of getting it right. I keep my site inspections loose. I want them to enjoy the destination. I want them to fall in love and take them to places that they will not even use because they will have other groups. And that's an important thing. Show them things that may be useful for the future or other parts of their business.
Okay, very good. Porrick, that idea of selling the destination, you know, it's a very specific piece of business and we want to convert that, and that's absolutely our primary purpose. But you rightly started off by saying that, you know, a planner has, particularly an agency, has future business, but it's the whole context of the experience. Even for association, you know, meetings, is slightly less so than the incentive. But how do you keep in mind that ultimately we're selling the destination first, and then we're fighting where it should go, the piece of business should go in the destination?
I think the most impressive site inspections that I've done have been site inspections where at the end of the day, maybe having been in, you know, a couple of venues and a number of different hotels and a number of restaurants, I am left with the overall a feeling of alignment between everybody that I've actually kind of been with in the course of the day. In other words, I'm not left with you know, the feeling that one particular hotel or one particular venue kind of stood out because they were wonderful or better at site and showing their facility than any other. I'm really left with a sense of this destination is the perfect destination for the event that I'm actually organizing. And I think that's the role of the DMO in many respects. It's the role of the destination marketing organization. And it's a crucial role to be the overarching spokesperson or ambassador for the destination, and to be able to show key elements in the destination that match the profile of the client requirements. And then ultimately kind of at the end of a day or at the end of 2 days of a site inspection like that, to be able to enter then into dialogue with the client around how the entire destination as a kind of as a holistic experience, how that can generate that special event, that transformative experience for the conference that's coming or for the event that's coming. And I think that's you know, that's in a way that the noble the noble role of the destination marketing organization is to play in that space, you know, of impartiality, of not being connected with any individual hotel or any individual venue or restaurant or transportation company, but being able to give the essence of the destination, and then have highlighted how key experiences in the destination from a hospitality perspective, from an entertainment perspective, from an activity perspective, how they can actually meet the specific needs that that particular client has. And certainly, you know, I've seen examples of destination marketing organizations or national tourist offices that have done that really, really well. And then other examples where they don't do it as well because they don't have that overarching understanding of the full extent of the destination. But I think just, you know, I think Rajiv said it earlier on, an important thing is the flexibility during the actual site inspection itself. You know, where the kind of emerging needs of the client are being kind of paid attention to. You know, it's that body language thing. You're listening all the time. You're watching. You're realizing that something isn't exactly as maybe expected by the client or hoped by the client, and you're jumping in there very quickly and saying, well, you know, what was that you didn't like, or, you know, can you explain more what you have in mind? And then you're saying, actually, you know, well, we do have a solution to that as well, and that you're able to actually make arrangements to showcase that solution very, very quickly. And I think, you know, as an overarching sort of, you know, presence, the DMO can do that best because the DMO can best know the entire kind of spectrum of what the destination has to offer.
So true. And I just want to follow up on that, Lindsay. I'm going to throw this one at you. You know, the client doesn't, you know, they have some objection, you know, and it's your hotel, your service. You know, how do you get over objections? You know, Porrick has described a kind of a very holistic idea, the idea that you sell the destination, that it's in partnership, and then you're highlighting your own individual, I suppose, pluses. But tell me from your own experience, you know, who has done this well when the client, obviously, it doesn't resonate with the client, whatever you've offered?
I think Parag has mentioned the word that I think is so important, which is partnership. And it's knowing that you're not only in competition with, you know, the venue next door or within your city, you're also potentially in competition with other cities. So you benefit from having, you know, from even if you don't win the entire event, you still benefit the city by if you get the dinner or if you get a room block or some element of the event. So don't be just disheartened, don't completely discount it and end the visit, because you can still be part of winning it for the city, and being part of recommending other elements. You know, you're a local representative for me and for my client, and I want you to make me feel like this is still the best choice for us and you can still win an element of the event. So I think remaining positive is a really good part of it, and sort of then seeing are there other aspects of the event, but also remembering that the client may have another event in a year's time that you will be suitable for. So still remaining positive and showing the best side of your venue is really important. I also work with multiple clients. So while I'm on a visit, learn to get to know me as a professional conference organizer. Who else do I work with? Because if I really do enjoy a venue, I will come back again and again, because it may be repetitive for me, but for every client, it's new and it's exciting for them.
And Lindsay, would you suggest that venues, hotels should practice, how do you handle, not complaints, obviously, but let's say challenges or misunderstandings, or is that something that should be done as part of the training process for those who carry out site inspections?
I think so. There's no harm in doing that, but I think it also harks back to the conversation earlier of the best way to find out those red flags or those problems is in person. You won't find those things out through emails or through videos on your website, and you need to then learn how to be adaptable. And I think having examples again from other events where you have said, oh, well, this didn't work, this won't work for you, but we did this with another client, is really good. And it's all about your confidence and your knowledge of your product is a big part of it.
So not defensive. Rajiv,
Yeah, not defensive.
hard to do when you feel very passionate about your own product or service that you don't like to hear.
Also knowing your competition is a really big part of it, because you'll build confidence of, yes, I can't do this, but I also know that none of the others in this area do, but I'm the only one who can offer this alternative, is a really powerful place to be.
So no negative selling, just highlighting your own benefits. Rajiv, Lindsay mentioned the great red flags. When you're on a site inspection, what are the red flags that you see coming up? Maybe an overactive salesperson who might be talking about price in front of the client. Is that a red flag for you?
So being a DMC, and when I have my client, the planner, and their client on a site inspection, one has to mind their P's and Q's. Okay. And I'm very careful never to discuss price, never to discuss things which can blow up, because even when you're doing the pre-planning for a trip of the actual program, there are points of differences and points of disagreement between what I think they should buy and what they think they want to buy. So I should be very careful on not trying to push my point of view over what my client may have said. I will always take permission from my client, whether should I show them this, should I talk about this. There's sometimes where I have to keep a real arm's length away, and sometimes where we're all one big happy family and I can say anything I want. There are clients where it's an open book. The end customer sees what I'm charging and the third party is working on a management fee. And there's some clients where, Rajiv, can you please build in 10% for us and don't tell anybody? But when I'm doing a site inspection with my suppliers and the hotels, it's important, and it's important on this process, everyone stays in their lane. And that means everyone remembers what their role is, what your contribution is, and who the client is. As a DMC, if I am bringing a client to a hotel, a third party and an end client, the hotel must not forget that I am their client first. I, as a DMC, will decide 99% of the time which hotel I will use, which venue I will use. So if the hotel tries to shaft me and my company, it doesn't go down well. And I am a company of some consequence. It doesn't happen very often, but I know it happens to small DMCs, small suppliers. This industry is very small. No matter where you are, where you move, never burn your bridges, because memories are long. There are 2 general managers who are on my naughty list and will remain on that naughty list because you crossed the line. I'm not there to cheat. I'm there to make money. I'm there to make sure everybody makes money. I will fight for my hotel partners, but everybody needs to remember we're a team. The hotel, the destination, the DMO are one team against the Lindsays of the world. Sorry to put it that way.
Don't take that personal, Lindsay. That's
I won't.
so Lindsay, having seen that environment, I mean, what are the red flags for you in terms of this doesn't feel right? This isn't a partnership model. You know, as Rajiv has described it, it's a commercial relationship. We all understand everybody needs to make money. But what are those things that you go, oh no, this is going to be a very difficult site inspection?
2 things that have already been mentioned are my big red flags. One is, talking about price in front of the client. Again, I'm also the client first, and we may have different agreements. It's just shows no class. But also not recognizing and knowing anything about the client is a big red flag. If I turn up, it has happened before where somebody has literally opened a file in front of me and went, oh, so we're looking at, and it's really obvious to me that they didn't even take 10 minutes beforehand to say, oh, I know who I'm meeting. I would like to think that you have Googled it, you know who you're meeting beforehand, and you know what's coming your way. And that is a big part of it, of not even being aware of what we're here for is the biggest red flag. And it's more common than you think. There will be some people who are listening who are really surprised by that, but it does happen quite a lot.
Okay. And Lindsay, in terms of I suppose being upfront and being clear, is that handled in advance? Do you let everybody know, remind everybody, okay? Or are you expecting that to be something that's understood?
I'm expecting that to be understood, but I know culturally that's quite different in different places. But the Irish in me is always very upfront. I also like to, I think the thing is, as a supplier or as a venue, you can ask questions and expect that they will be answered in an honest way, because I think site visits are also a 2-way kind of interview of it's checking if we both fit with each other. If a client comes on a site visit and is demanding or is rude to you, that's what they're going to be like whenever they're working with you as well. So I think being open in your communication is a big part of it.
Okay. I'm just reminding you, if there are any questions out there, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll answer them. Porrick, you've done training all over the world and you're really experienced in this area. In terms of the site inspection, do you think you should kind of write a narrative in advance, working out various scenarios for if you're a venue or if you're a hotel, if you haven't got that, is that something that should be created? You need to practice and then obviously work on the specifics of the program, but have some framework.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of slightly kind of counterintuitive things, because on the one hand you absolutely need a script, and on the other hand you absolutely need to go off script. So in a way, I suppose the only, like, if we use a ski analogy, the only way you can go off piste is when you know how to ski. So when you're an expert skier, then you can go off piste and you can be safe and you can be effective and you can have an amazing, exhilarating experience. But in order to do that, you have to know all of the technical steps. And it's the same with a site inspection. The best site inspection will be the site inspection that's organic and that evolves according to the way the client or the group of clients presents themselves, during the site inspection. But I think you have to have a script that's emerging directly from your brand identity, from your brand value proposition. It has to be a script that focuses on the benefits that you offer as opposed to the features that you offer. And that's, I think, in all the training that we've done, Pat, over the years, it's probably the thing we focus on the most, because it's the biggest mistake that's made during a site inspection. particularly with junior hospitality staff. Rajiv referred to it already, where they feel compelled to point out the absolutely obvious, as in, here is a wardrobe and here is the iron and the iron board where you can, they don't even say where you can iron your clothes. They say, so I'm standing in front of a wardrobe which has been opened and I'm looking at what I know to be an iron, and I'm told with some degree of flourish, and this is an iron. And that kind of is kind of things not to do 101 during a site inspection is turned to features. And so many site inspections are not only turning to features, they're centered on features. And I think the value of having a script is that you can ask yourself at every single moment as you kind of craft that script, am I talking about a benefit to the client, or am I highlighting something that's patently obvious? This is the gym, as Rajiv kind of famously pointed out in his great blog. So that's the first thing. Get the script and have the script focus on the benefits. So the differences that it makes because of the elements that are in your hospitality experience, but then be able to go off script
and be able to do it. Rajiv, we've got I'm glad you're raising your hand, because I've got a question coming in for you. We have a great question from Bruno Simos, who's a very experienced DMC, as you know, known all over the world. He wants to know how you handle destination weaknesses with upfront. And he's mentioning Macau mightn't be very well known. It's got good connectivity, but it can be a bit of a challenge because you're coming through potentially Hong Kong. There's a bit of a logistics. So how do you handle what seem to be inherent problems? And Rajiv, I'd like, today you were telling us this morning that you're writing a press release because there is a situation in Kashmir at the moment, an unfortunate situation between two countries in the region. And, although it's happening in a very specific part of the continent, to somebody not knowledgeable about the destination itself, they might think, oh my God, India and Pakistan I could never bring a piece of business. So how do you handle that element?
Well, India and Pakistan have been at war for the last 78 years since independence, and few people know that. And every few years, we'll send fighter jets over there. They'll send terrorists across the border. Happens. This time the government has said, you know what, enough is enough. So hopefully, fingers crossed for everybody, we don't need a third war in the world. So let's see how that happens. Look, a destination, and I think Asia in general has had times of turbulence all the time. Okay, be it Macau goes through the typhoon season and other regions go through political disturbance. It's a part of the game. Hi, Bruno. Good to hear from you. Long time. I don't look at your distance as a weakness. I mean, I have a country where my incentive has to be 3 cities. I've twisted how I do that. My incentive has to have 5-hour bus rides or 2-hour train rides. Now, how do you take that challenge and animate it? So on our train rides, I put caricaturists, I put musicians. There are things you can do. I've always loved that hydrofoil experience from Hong Kong to Macau. It's interesting. Not everybody in the world has done a boat, and not everybody in the world has done a hydrofoil, and it's a very short ride. And yes, Asia in general is an acquired taste. The number of global incentives coming to Asia from overseas is small. I have seen statistics from a place like Thailand where only 25% of their MICE business is from outside Asia. So given that your business is predominantly from within the region, and it's a region that is used to transfer times and complicated getting from point A to point B, I don't look at it as a weakness. It is an irritant, but I would play that weakness and make it something interesting. If you have to do the transfer, let's do it interestingly, let's animate it, and then when you get there at the end, let's make the welcome grand.
So your advice, Rajiv, is don't hide the obvious challenge, and I like the word irritant, but you take it, address it up front, accept it, and you then see how you can turn it into a benefit, if not at least something which is not going to determine the business not going to.
Yeah, but Bruno, this is where you hire people to take the bags on and off. I mean, when I do programs in India, from the time they land, their bags are tagged under a special system. They don't touch their bags again into a hotel, out of a hotel. And we're fortunate to be in a region where labor is not so expensive.
I just add to that. I would say,
yeah.
I would actually say the bigger issue, I would agree, it's an irritant. It's not a, red flag. It's not a reason not to book a destination. People are used to traveling, just long distances if it's worth traveling to. And I think that's the two big parts there. One is it's an irritant. The actual bad part is if it's a surprise. So be upfront, communicate that this is the realistic aspect of travel, which people are used to. So tell them, oh, pack light, we've got everything you need, because we also don't want you to have to take this luggage on and off. Try and make it as easy for them as possible, but more so make sure they know what to expect. I think the surprise aspect of this inconvenience would be much worse. Make sure they know absolutely every step if they can. When you're coming into arrivals, you'll turn left and that's where you're going to do this. The more information you can give people, the more prepared they are, and then it seems like it wasn't all that bad, actually. I think that's a really big part of it, is not making it a surprise.
Right. Let's not forget,
so
Heathrow to London City is an hour. JFK to the city is an hour. That's irritating, to be in a car or a bus for an hour in traffic. It's boring.
Yeah, I found that actually the only people who are upset about traveling for more than 30 minutes are people from the UK when they're in the UK. When they're somewhere else, they love the journey.
Of course. I can see this conversation, as was predicted. This could go on for 3 hours, and unfortunately we've 4 minutes left. So I just want to ask each of you to go around and to give us, how do we follow up on a site inspection? Question A, and rapid answer, and B, your best top tip to leave in terms of making a site inspection effective in terms of winning the business. So Porrick, I'm going to start with you to give the other guys a chance to get their thoughts together on that. So following up, best tip, and site inspection in general, best tip.
So I think the follow-up has got to be showing evidence of having listened throughout the site inspection, and then putting in practice or creating a communication that addresses all of the concerns that perhaps were raised, that addresses them in real, tangible terms.
And in general, great points in terms of communication, which is so important, and probably the immediacy. Do it within the time frame that you said you would. Is in terms of the actual on-site site inspection, is there anything that you would highlight?
I think it's all the relationship that's built, and it's all the trust and confidence that's built during that kind of time that you have together, which is it's an extraordinary thing that you're being entrusted with people's time over kind of many, not just hours, but many days, particularly if you're a PCO or a DMC that's leading the site inspection, or indeed a DMO that's leading the site inspection. So make sure you build that relationship, because that's the relationship that will bring not just the next piece of business, but many, many, many pieces of business after that.
Very good. Lindsay?
I'd say the worst follow-up is silence. So follow up with a big thank you, but as it's following up with all of the links to the things you talked about. It's the intro to that supplier that I recommended, all of the things, again, to show you were really listening. But also it's a fully reworked proposal based on the conversations that we had, is a really good thing to come up with, rather than just, as said, I'll give you 10% on this thing within the document. It's about a fully reworked document. And my sort of tip at the same time is, even if you can only do a small amount of personalization and preparation, do it. It's having their logo in the welcome. It's having the ballroom lit in the company colors, so they can really imagine what it would be like whenever they're doing their party. So that small little nods to, I prepared for this, is really good.
Very good. Thank you. Raj, I'll give you the final words.
To be successful in follow-up, you need to make notes as you go along. Okay, it's very easy after a 3-hour visit. You are going to forget things. So even it's a mental note or a little WhatsApp, or have an assistant follow you around, do that. On the site visit, tell a story. Don't be, this is my room size, this is my pillow size. I've done site inspections in which they've had violinists in the rooms. I did a site inspection in Ireland where I entered a room. There was chocolates, a picture of my family. For those of you who know me, serve me ice cream and I'll be your friend for life. Make the site inspection engaging. Make it fun. Don't feel fearful. I need to show them everything. People will like you if you treat them well. They want to work with people. They don't want to work with buildings. And that's the distinction. If you're a good human, if you treat them with a smile, if you make them feel welcome, even if you have a weaker product, it might tip it over the line for you.
Super. Well, I can tell you, having listened to the three of you, I've made notes, mental notes. I'll have to take time out to actually write them down. Fantastic insights shared generously and with great humor. So to one and all, thank you so much. To everybody who signed in to listen to the webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Lovely to see you again, and look forward to seeing you in Macau and more business there. Take care, everybody. Goodbye now.
Bye.